Hi, I'm sitting here now with Daniel LIBESKIND, internationally renowned architect and also architect for the World Trade Center Memorial. So thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you. Actually, I'm the master planner.
The master
Ground Zero,
planner.
which is the entire sort of composition of buildings, placement of memorial, and all the other things.
Now, well, we should begin that you were actually born in Poland, post-war Poland, and moved to the States as a teenager, became a citizen here in 1965.
That's right.
But I understood that you were quite a talented piano player before giving it up for architecture.
Actually, I was a professional musician, and a very strange instrument. It was originally not the piano, it was the accordion.
The accordion,
yes.
Wow.
In fact, when I lived in Israel, I actually competed in the America-Israel Prize for Music, and I won together with actually a very famous violinist, Itzhak Perlman. We both won this award, but I wound up in architecture.
Okay, so how has music inspired you with your designs and all of that?
Well, music is very close to architecture. First of all, buildings have acoustics. A bad building doesn't sound right. And of course, beyond that, the emotional impact of music is very similar to the emotional impact of architecture. Both fields are very mathematical, very precise, but ultimately they communicate to the soul. And in that sense, music and architecture have always been sort of partners in life.
Well, speaking of communicating through the soul, I was reading that you recently said a quote that architecture is in fact the machine that produces the universe, which produces the gods. So can you talk a little bit about that comment?
Well, architecture is so important in our lives. We often take it for granted, but what we see out of our windows, the way we open the door, what awaits us in the world, is much of it is grounded in the kind of cities, places, homes we live in. And of course, the shape of a window and what you see behind it, beyond it, is certainly part of architecture. And therefore, people as smart as Freud said that the mind is the closest thing to Rome, with its many layers of foundations hidden beneath the obvious surface.
Well, prior to working on Ground Zero, starting in 2003, when you won the competition, you were also working at the Jewish Museum, designing that in Berlin, which took approximately 12 years. Is that correct?
That's correct, actually 13.
So how does that compare to designing something like this?
Well, you know, the Jewish Museum was my first project. You know, I was a late bloomer, as my wife calls me. I did many other things before. But of course, the Jewish Museum was a very contested building. It wasn't easy to build it, not because the architecture was complicated, but because politically in Germany, to build a Jewish museum, which is not an addendum or not an old building that has been renovated, but a new bold building that speaks to both the tragedy of the Holocaust, but also the future of Jewish life, to the hope in a modern democratic society. It took 13 years. It was a marathon, and it prepared me. In some strange sense, Ground Zero is also a marathon. These are not sprint kind of projects. They take many, many years, and they take a true commitment, a passion, and a belief in the project.
Designing places like the Jewish Museum as well as the Freedom Tower in New York both evoke such emotion from people. How is that, as a designer, as an architect, how do you go about doing that?
Well, these projects, whether it's Ground Zero or Jewish Museum or anything that touches on a deep memory, and also on tragedy, is difficult, and of course it resonates with people's emotions. It's not an abstract idea to build a building, some sort of box prettily decorated that you like or you don't like. It's something that belongs really to life, because it connects history through the past into the present and also beyond into the future. So it's not a wonder that these kinds of projects really concern people very much and have, of course, a tremendous impact on people's lives.
Talk a little bit about the process of what it's been like to be designing the Ground Zero, because I know that there have been a lot of revisions that have had to be made. Larry Silverstein, the developer, I guess wanted more floor space. Just talk a little bit about that.
It's a very complex process. It's highly politicized. You know, it's not just doing some drawings. But what I sought to do is to bring consensus in order to allow the site to be rebuilt. You know, believer as I am in democracy and the democratic process, we have to garner support from all different parties, and there are many stakeholders: families of the victims, investors, the governor of New York, governor of New Jersey, mayor of New York, Port Authority. There's a myriad of interests, and to bring it all together, that is the function of the master plan. And exactly the master plan which I presented to the public is what is being built. Of course it has evolved. Without an evolution, there would be no life. But I think what the public will see in a very short time, when the site becomes accessible, 2009, is exactly the scheme that they saw in the competition, and they'll see it as something important and moving.
So you wouldn't say that your master plan has been compromised in any way, even though it has been
No, absolutely
changed?
not. There has been evolution, and I didn't get every aspect. There were compromises, inevitably, as they are, in such a large project, where hundreds of thousands of people will work and live. But I would say that the project's, all the important dimensions of the project, whether it's the Wedge of Light Plaza, whether it's the memorial, importance of the memorial and the footprints and the waterfalls, the slurry wall, the foundation of the site, the Freedom Tower, symbolic, 1776, with platforms at the old World Trade Center heights, the buildings descending in a spiral formation, which really echo the torch on the in the Lady Liberty's hand, which stands really right south of the site. All of those important elements have been preserved in the plan.
We should talk about the height. You were just mentioning 1,776 feet with the spire. Apparently, unless there's a building that's going to be built any higher than that, that will be the largest office building in the world. Is that right?
It is the tallest building in the world, but you know, I wasn't interested in the tall, because you might have a taller building in Shanghai tomorrow or in Dubai or wherever. I was interested in a building that has a significance, and it is not symbolic in any obvious way. It's symbolic in an important way, because this building stands at ground zero, at the bedrock, rises to a height that has to do with the Declaration of Independence. And let's just think that it's right next to St. Paul's Church, where our first president, President Washington, came to pray after being inaugurated. So again, the history of the place, memory of the place, are important features, not only steel and concrete and glass.
The Great Slurry Wall is also very important. Can you talk a little bit about what that represents?
The Slurry Wall is that huge wall on the western side of the site, which was revealed during the attack, and it's been sort of a foundation from the beginning of that site, and it lasted through the horrors of the attack. And I thought this wall, as a living foundation, should be made accessible to the public. It will be, I think, a very moving encounter with such an unexpected foundation that was revealed and continues to be revealed to the public as part of the memorial sequence of events, part of the museum and the visitor center.
Now, the master plan is also very conscious of taking plenty of precautions as far as safety goes. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Well, of course, we have to create a living city. We have to create an open and accessible city that is beautiful, that is at once speaking to the memory of those who perished there in the thousands, but also to the vitality, the freedom, and the liberty that New York is famous for. And it's really to balance these facts, we also have to create something that can learn from the past, from the World Trade Center. We have to build buildings that are safer, buildings that are really created in a different way, and the entire site has to be treated with great care. We live in a vulnerable world. We live in a world which is always threatened by terrorism, but we have to create a city that is open and at the same time responds to the needs of our time.
So looking at the time frame, when is the building, the Freedom Tower, expected to be completed?
Well, the first part of the site, and the most important, I think, is the memorial, will open 2009. That will be open. Soon after, the PATH terminal, which is very important, which will bring the public, really, the public transport, and it's a very beautiful station by Santiago Calatrava, will open on that site. 2010, the topping off of the Freedom Tower will commence. So you'll see by 2010, and of course the visitor center and the museum at the same time. And then soon after, Tower 2, 3, 4, 5, all the other really aspects of the plan. Of course, 2009, you'll see the Wedge of Light Plaza. You'll begin to see the slurry wall. So pretty soon, I think, given the complexity and the scale of this project, it will become part of the life of New York.
And the city of New York has already guaranteed leasing space, isn't that right, within the building?
There are many, of course, possibilities, and life in Lower Manhattan is really resurgent. There is a huge interest in Lower Manhattan, and one of my ideas in creating the plan for Ground Zero was not just to make buildings, but to create a new neighborhood, a neighborhood that is not just about office buildings, but about life of the streets, neighborhood that can resonate with the neighborhoods, whether it's Wall Street or Tribeca or Chinatown, Battery Park City, a lively neighborhood that's really open 24 hours, 7 days a week, which will bring new life into this once devastated area.
I have to ask you, with such a huge endeavor like this, what are you going to be doing after? And any idea?
Well, I'm lucky that it's fortunately not my only project. It started as being the center, but I'm a lucky architect. We have more than 40 projects in our office in New York, all over the world, and of course that's very lucky, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for talking to us, and we can't wait to see the progress and see what happens in the next few years. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.